That morning, the snow fell thick, like someone was salting the whole mountainside. I stood on my own porch with wet gloves and a white cloud of breath, staring at a brand new lock where my old one used to be. The key I'd carried for over 20 years, the key that once opened the door for my little girl's laughter, suddenly meant nothing. The new metal shined, cold as a stranger's eyes. My daughter stood behind the door, her voice sweet as sugar but hard as stone. Mom, don't make this difficult. Christmas is busy. Just stay at the care home for a bit so everything's easier. I heard the deadbolt slide into place like a line being crossed. And right then, I understood. They hadn't just changed the locks. They were trying to change the owner, only they forgot one thing. On paper, that house had never left my hands. My name is Evelyn Carter, and in 2025, I was 61 years old. I live in a small mountain town in the U.S., the kind of place where winter comes early, roads twist like ribbon, and people still look you in the eye at the grocery store. Snow doesn't ask permission up here. It just falls, quiet and heavy, covering everything in white. Beautiful, yes, but also the kind of cold that makes you feel small. My house is a log cabin on a hillside. It looks down into a valley with a thin creek that runs in summer and turns to glass in winter. My husband Cal and I bought that place when we were young, back when we didn't have much more than stubbornness and two strong hands. Cal built the porch steps himself. I painted the window trim myself. I still remember the smell of fresh wood and paint, and the way Cal laughed when I got it all over my clothes. It's our house, he'd say. If it gets messy, we clean it. But the happiness, that we keep. Cal died 3 years ago from cancer. In his last weeks, he would lie on the couch and look out the front window at the pine trees standing still like old soldiers. And he'd say, so softly I had to lean in to hear him, "Hold on to the house. The house is us. It's what we built." And I did. I held on by splitting wood, shoveling snow, changing light bulbs, and lighting a candle at the window at night. Like I was telling Cal, I'm still here, I'm still standing. I have one child, my daughter, Brooke. She was 36 then. She lives down in town about 20 minutes away. She married Darren, a man with a smooth voice and a sharp mind, the kind who can make anything sound reasonable. Darren is a real estate agent around here. He understands paperwork, signatures, and the little cracks in people's hearts, especially a mother's. In early December 25, Brooke started calling more often. She asked if I had enough firewood, if I was warm, if I needed groceries brought up. I softened. I thought, she's grown now. Maybe she's finally looking after me. She said, "Come down for Christmas dinner this year. We're having some friends over. Don't be alone up there." I said yes. I missed noise. I missed not setting an extra plate for Cal and pretending it didn't hurt. But then Brooke's questions shifted. It was like she was measuring my life with a tape measure. "Do you still have the house paperwork? Do you remember whose name the house is in? Have you thought about later on?" I laughed it off. "I'm still healthy." There was a pause on the line, then she said, "I'm just worried, Mom." I thought it was worry. Until the morning of December 14th, 2025, 10 days before Christmas, when I came home and my key didn't fit my own front door. I'd gone into town for groceries, flour, butter, bacon, and a little box of peppermint candy for the small tree in my living room. The snow was coming down hard and the wind hit my back like it was pushing me. I climbed the porch steps and slid my key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I crouched down and looked closer. A brand new lock. Bright, clean, wrong. I knocked. No answer. I knocked harder, my heart thumping in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. Finally, the door cracked open. Brooke stood there with her hair pulled back like she'd been in a hurry. Darren was behind her with his arms folded, watching me like this was a scene he'd already rehearsed. "Brooke?" My voice came out thin. "Why is the lock changed?" Brooke gave a tight, uneasy smile. "Mom, you're back." Darren stepped forward, wearing that reasonable voice like a coat. "We changed it for safety. There've been break-ins lately, and you forget things sometimes." That word, forget, hit like a slap. I don't forget. I'm older. And older is not permission for people to erase you. "I don't forget," I said. "Let me in." Brooke lifted her hands like she was trying to calm an animal. Don't make this a big deal. Darren and I talked. There's a care home near town, just for a while. It'll be easier. Christmas is busy. The house will be full. We'll take care of you. A care home? I repeated, like my ears were refusing to believe the words. Brooke nodded, still sweet, but not soft. Just temporarily. I'll handle the house. You won't have to climb the mountain in the snow anymore, Darren added, like a final stamp on the conversation. We already have the paperwork lined up. You just need to sign a couple things so it's smooth. They let me step inside, but it didn't feel like coming home. It felt like being allowed in. On the living room table sat a thick stack of papers. On top was a photocopied deed. Darren pointed at it like he was teaching me a lesson. See? The house was transferred to Brooke a while ago. You signed it last year, Kim. I leaned over and read the lines. Grantor, Evelyn Carter. Grantee, Brooke Carter. Then I looked at the signature. It looked like mine, but it wasn't. My handwriting has a long tail on certain letters. This one was clipped and stiff, like someone trying to copy a person they didn't understand. I never signed this, I said. Darren smiled, small, smug. Evelyn, you're just remembering wrong. You're older. We don't blame you. Brooke stared at the floor. I looked at my daughter, the baby I'd once wrapped in blankets during power outages, the little girl I'd carried to the car in blizzards. Do you believe that? I asked her quietly. Brooke lifted her eyes, watery with something, fear, shame, I didn't know. Mom, I just want you safe. Please don't make this hard. I stood up straight. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I asked one slow question. If I don't sign, what are you going to do to me? Darren took a step closer, lowering his voice like a threat dressed as concern. Then you go to the care home. We'll take care of you. And the house. We manage. I looked at that shiny new lock. I looked at the snow outside, and I understood. They weren't taking care of me. They were clearing the path so I could disappear from my own life quietly. I turned and walked out. Brooke called after me, Mom, it's freezing. I didn't turn around. I went down the steps, the snow crunching under my boots. I got in my car and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went pale. I never thought I'd have to fight my own daughter, but I also couldn't sit still and let them bury me while I was still breathing. Some pain makes you scream. Other pain makes you go silent, so silent you can hear your own heartbeat. I'm the second kind. Not because I'm gentle, because I've lived long enough to learn something. With paperwork, screaming doesn't matter. Evidence does. I drove straight into town to the one place I knew kept the truth, whether you liked it or not. The county recorder's office. It wasn't a big building. Old. Smelled like paper, dust, and stale coffee. But it was where stamps and dates told the truth. I got there right when they opened. Snow still piled on the steps. I went inside, pulled off my gloves, rubbed my numb hands. A clerk named Jenna, maybe 30, hair in a neat bun, looked up. How can I help you? I need the ownership records for my home on Ridge Hollow Road, I said. I'm the owner, Jenna typed. The keyboard clicked like dry branches snapping. She stared at the screen, frowned, then looked back at me. Our system shows the current owner is still Evelyn Carter. A breath left me like I'd just surfaced from deep water. I knew it, I said, my throat rough. Jenna tilted her head. Is there a dispute? I hated saying it out loud. It felt humiliating. But the humiliation wasn't mine. I was the one locked out. My daughter says the house was transferred. She showed me a photocopy deed. Jenna held out her hand. Can I see it? I handed it over. Jenna studied the corners, the notary number, the seal. Then she tapped the bottom. This notary number doesn't match our county format, she said. She squinted at the seal. And this seal looks like it was scanned and pasted. My heart started pounding, hard, cold, steady. Jenna kept going. If a real deed transfer had been recorded, we'd have a filing date and a record here. There isn't one. Do you want a certified copy showing current ownership? I nodded. She printed a packet with an official stamp. The home was mine, and there had been no transfer recorded. I held those pages and my hands shook, this time not from cold, from rage, from grief, from the sheer disbelief of it. My daughter and her husband had waved a fake deed in my face. I asked Jenna for one more thing, the property history. She printed the list of filings tied to my parcel. No transfer. But there was one entry that caught my eye. Something filed recently and returned for missing information. I pointed. What's this? Jenna leaned closer. A submission dated November 29th. Returned due to errors. Usually those come through an agent or a filing service. Can we see who submitted it? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Jenna hesitated. I'm not sure I'm allowed to just hand that over. I didn't beg. I didn't raise my voice. I just told her the truth. They changed my locks. They told me I signed something I didn't sign. If I don't have the truth, I'm going to get pushed into a place I don't belong. Jenna looked at me for a long moment. Then she exhaled softly. I can't give you names without an official request, she said. But if law enforcement or an attorney asks, we can provide it. I nodded. That was enough for now. I walked out into the snow and stood there a moment, looking at the mountains blurred by fog. I felt a strange kind of sadness. Not about the papers, but about Brooke. The daughter I thought would hold my hand someday was standing on the other side of a lie. I called Kimball, the local attorney who'd helped Cal and me buy that house years ago. She listened without interrupting, then said, calm and firm, Evelyn, this isn't a family argument. This is document forgery with signs of attempted unlawful occupancy. You need to, 1, file a police report, 2, send a preservation notice, and 3, if they block your access, seek emergency relief. My voice caught. What if my daughter gets dragged into this? Kimball paused, then answered slowly, if you stay quiet, you lose your home, and you teach your daughter that wrongdoing has no cost. If you do what's right, it may hurt her, but it might also wake her up. Wake her up. That phrase burned. I didn't go back to the cabin that night. I couldn't bear standing in front of that new lock again. I stayed with my friend Martha, another widow around my age. She didn't ask a million questions. She just poured tea, pressed the warm mug into my hands, and said, they're testing whether you still have strength. You do. I slept on her couch, but barely. The wind thumped the window, the trees creaked. I remembered Brooke as a little girl asleep on my chest, breathing steady. I kept asking myself, how did I end up needing to prove I own my own home? The next morning, December 15th, I went to the police station. In a town like ours, the station is usually for lost dogs or icy roads. But I walked in with certified documents and a pain I couldn't put a pretty name on. The officer who met me was Harris. Young, maybe 25, with that slight hesitation of someone who hasn't seen many mothers report their own children. I didn't blame him, I just spoke clearly. They changed my locks. They showed me a photocopied deed saying I transferred my home. I did not. Here's the certified record that my house is still in my name. Officer Harris studied the paperwork and his face tightened. You want to file a report for forgery and unlawful occupancy? He asked. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to report my daughter. I just didn't want to be erased. I want access to my home restored, I said. And I want this to stop. He nodded. We'll accompany you. Don't confront them alone. And yes, get your attorney involved. Kimball moved quickly. She sent Darren and Brooke formal notice. Cease interference with the lawful owner, preserve documents, and be advised of legal consequences. She filed for an emergency order requiring they not block my access and that evidence be preserved. On December 16th, Officer Harris came up with me, along with a locksmith. I stood at the porch, snow falling light, my heart beating like it was trying to break out of my ribs. I didn't know how Brooke would look at me with law enforcement between us. I didn't know how I would look at her without falling apart. Harris knocked. Darren opened the door, and the reasonable mask slipped the second he saw the badge. Harris spoke evenly. You are preventing the lawful owner from accessing her property. Here is certified proof of ownership. Continued interference may result in charges. Darren frowned. This is a family matter. Harris didn't blink. Forgery is not a family matter. Brooke stood behind Darren, eyes red, staring at me like I was a stranger. I didn't insult her. I didn't scream. I asked one small question. Brooke, do you really want your mother out of her own home? Her mouth trembled. She didn't answer. The locksmith turned to me. Ma'am, do you want me to replace the locks back? I looked at that shiny metal. I looked at the porch steps Cal built. I nodded. Replace them. As the locksmith worked, Darren backed up, voice hard. You do this, Evelyn, and you cut your daughter off. I turned toward Brooke, my voice thick. My daughter isn't the person who locks her mother out in the snow, I said. My daughter was a little girl who held onto me when she had a fever and said, Don't leave me. And now, you let me stand outside my own door. Brooke's face cracked. She started crying, sharp, broken sobs. Mom, I was scared, she said. Darren said you'd fall, you'd forget. He said if I didn't handle it early, everything would get messy. I took one step forward, not to touch her, just to speak closer. You were scared I'd fall, I said softly. So you pushed me out? Darren tried to interrupt. You don't understand. Harris cut him off. Sir, stop. The locksmith finished and placed a new key in my palm. The metal felt heavy, like an oath. I opened the door. The smell of old wood and firewood hit me like a memory. I nearly cried right there, but I swallowed it down. Then I noticed something on the table. An open envelope with a bank logo. I picked it up. It was paperwork for a home equity line of credit, a loan application using my house as collateral. I turned slowly to Darren. You were going to borrow against my home? Darren went pale. Brooke dropped into a chair, sobbing. Officer Harris stepped forward and instructed that the documents be preserved as evidence. I stood in the middle of my own living room, listening to the wind outside and my own breathing. I had my key back, but I knew they weren't done. This was never only about locks. It was about turning my life into a piece of paper I supposedly signed. And now I was going to prove all the way to the end that I never signed my own disappearance. From December 17 to 20, I lived in that strange state of doing everything while trying to breathe. I installed a front camera. I changed the Wi-Fi password. I locked all original documents in a safe. I called the bank and warned them there might be fraudulent loan activity. I did everything Cal used to do, and in each task, I felt both stronger and sadder. Brooke texted nonstop. Mom, I'm sorry. Please don't let Darren get arrested. Please let me come talk. I read every message, my heart twisting, but I didn't reply right away. I couldn't let my softness become their bridge. On December 21st, Darren showed up alone. He stayed at the bottom of the steps, didn't come closer. His voice was still slick. Evelyn, let's settle this. You're older. What do you need a house for? I'll buy it at a fair price. I'll get you placed somewhere comfortable. I stood behind the door, not opening it fully. The camera recorded every word. I'm not selling, I said. Darren let out a bitter laugh. You think you're winning? You can win paperwork, but you'll lose your daughter. That line hit exactly where he aimed it, my motherhood. He thought I'd flinch. I answered slowly. I lost my daughter the moment she locked me out in the snow. Darren's tone dropped. Brooke needs money. I'm in debt. This house is an asset. You don't understand business. I opened the door a crack more, looked straight at him. So you're in debt and you take my home? He shrugged, eyes cold. That's life. The strong keep what they can. I closed the door, not because I was weak, but because I refused to listen to any more filth. I sent the recording to Kimball and Officer Harris. On December 22nd, Kimball called. The recorder's office confirmed the notary seal didn't match any valid record. They also had information about a missing notary stamp reported stolen in a neighboring county. That meant Darren wasn't just improvising. He had connections. On December 23rd, Brooke came to my door. Her hands were empty, her face drained. Snow clung to her hair. Seeing her like that, I could almost see the little girl again. Except now she was a grown woman who'd been led by fear. Mom? She said, her voice breaking. I didn't know Darren would take it this far. I stood inside, looking at her through the glass. My body wanted to open the door and pull her in the way I used to. My memory wanted to, but I also remembered the new lock, the care home, the deadbolt sliding into place. I opened the door, but I didn't step aside yet. "Brooke," I said, "tell me the truth. Did Darren tell you he planned to use this house to borrow money?" Brooke burst into tears, shaking her head. "He said he was just protecting it. He said you'd be okay at the care home. He told me if I didn't do it, I was selfish. I'm so stupid, Mom." My voice cracked. "You're not stupid. You were scared. But fear doesn't make wrongdoing, okay?" Brooke pressed her forehead against the doorframe. "Mom, I want to leave him." I went still for a heartbeat. I heard the wind. I felt the ache. And somewhere under it, I heard Cal's voice. "If she comes back to the truth, give her a door." I opened it wider. "Come in," I said. "Sit down. Tell me everything. But you have to tell the police the truth, too." Brooke nodded and stepped inside like someone coming home after getting lost. In the kitchen, I made tea. My hands trembled. Cold, hurt, maybe both. Brooke told me Darren had lost money on a bad investment, a land deal that went wrong. He kept saying he could fix it before spring if he had collateral, if he had my house. He convinced Brooke I was weak, that I'd end up in a care home anyway, and that doing it early was better for me. Then she said the sentence that split me open. He told me, if you refused, you were selfish, that you were keeping the house just for yourself. I set my hand flat on the table, steadying myself. "This house isn't just for me the way he made it sound," I said. "This house is my life with your father. It's where you grew up. But if you ever want something from me, you ask with truth. You don't take with a fake signature." Brooke cried and nodded. No arguing, no excuses, just the look of someone finally seeing how far she'd been dragged. On Christmas Eve, December 24th, the police brought Darren in for questioning. He tried to deny it, but there was too much. The forged paperwork, the rejected filing history, the recorded threats, the loan application, and Brooke's statement. I didn't stand there to watch him be taken away. I didn't want that kind of victory. I just wanted the end of being locked out of my own life. That night, Brooke stayed at my house, not as the one who changed the locks, as my daughter. We decorated the small tree together. I handed her an old bell ornament Cal bought when she was 5. Brooke hung it carefully, her hand shaking. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm sorry I changed the locks." My eyes burned. "I forgive you," I said, "but I won't forget, and you can't forget either." Brooke nodded. She understood. Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Forgiveness opens a door, but keeps the boundary. After Christmas, life settled the way mountain towns do, slow, cold, clear. People took down lights, shoveled paths, went back to work. But Brooke and I had to return to something harder than routine. Trust. Trust can't be settled like real estate. You don't sign one paper and suddenly it's fixed. Brooke moved in with me temporarily. She told me she'd filed for separation. She started therapy at the county clinic, small place where the nurses know your name. She got part-time work at the town library. It didn't pay much, but it brought something she desperately needed: quiet, structure, and dignity. I watched her go to work, bundled in a warm coat, hair tied back, and I saw a different Brooke beginning to return. Brooke before someone taught her that love meant control. Some nights, she would sit at the kitchen table, staring out the window, and ask in a voice barely above air, "Do you hate me?" The question pierced, but it wasn't Darren's weapon this time. It was my daughter's awareness, and I refused to answer pain with pain. I set my tea down and looked at her. "I hate the way you let fear drive you," I said slowly. "I hate the way you started believing mom is old means mom should be quiet. But I don't hate you, if you're willing to live right again." Brooke cried, quiet, steady tears dripping onto her hands. "Mom, I don't know why I believed Darren. I told her the truth, no sugar." "Because Darren said exactly what you were most afraid of," I said. "You were afraid of losing control, afraid I'd die, afraid you wouldn't be enough. And Darren turned that fear into a rope and used it to pull you into pushing me out." Brooke nodded, like she'd finally been caught inside her own heart. In the weeks after, we practiced something simple and hard: talking without hiding knives behind our backs. I asked Brooke to do one thing for me, something small but real. I asked her to write, in her own handwriting, that the house belonged to me and that she was wrong to take part in changing the locks and believing the forged papers. Not so I could show it off, so she could see the truth with her own eyes. Brooke wrote it. Her hand shook, but she wrote it. Then one night she slid the page across the table and said, "I want you to keep it. So if I get weak again someday, why, you can remind me." I didn't praise her. I didn't clap. I just nodded. Sometimes what people need isn't a gold star. It's quiet recognition. Yes, you're walking the right way. I did my part too. I met with Kimball and set up a trust in my name with clear conditions. I named an independent trustee if I ever became incapacitated. I updated my will. Not because I hated my child, because I loved myself enough not to be erased again. And I told Brooke plainly, I didn't hide it. "You're still in my will," I said, "but there are conditions. If you live with decency, you'll have your place. If you ever return to the old road, you will not be able to push me out of my home again." Brooke looked at me, eyes red, and nodded. "I understand," she said. "I need that." One night, Brooke stood on the porch watching the snow fall and asked, "Do you miss Dad?" I stood beside her and listened to the wind thread through the pines. "I do," I said, "but I'm not going to use your father as a weapon against you. He would have wanted you strong through kindness, not strong through taking." Brooke lowered her head. "I wish he was here, so I wouldn't have done something this stupid." I looked at her, my voice thick. "If your father was here, you still could have made a mistake," I said. "Mistakes don't check your age before they show up, but he would have made you apologize with actions. So, live like he's watching." Brooke broke down, and this time I let myself hold her. Not to erase what happened, but to start something new. In January, the cold stayed. Brooke and I repaired little things around the cabin. A loose porch board, an old rug, a dusty picture frame of Cal. Brooke hung the wreath back on the door with a lock I chose. She moved slowly, carefully, like she was learning what home meant again. One afternoon, Brooke said, "Mom, I want to give something back." "What?" I asked. She pulled out my old key, the one that stopped working the day they changed the lock, and placed it in my palm. "I kept it for a few days," she admitted. "I wanted to return it because I took it from you." I held that old key. The metal was cold, but something in my chest warmed because my daughter wasn't trying to win anymore. She was trying to return what she stole. "I'm going to keep it," I told her, "not to open the door, just to remember there was a day I almost got locked out of my own life." And I stood back up. Brooke nodded, wiping her cheeks. The last night before I took down the Christmas lights, we stood in the kitchen and looked at the cabin. Snow on the roof, windows glowing warm. Brooke asked quietly, "Are you afraid I'll do it again?" I looked at her and answered honestly, "I'm afraid," I said, "but I'm not going to live by fear anymore. I'm going to live by boundaries. And if you want to stay in my life, you have to respect those boundaries." Brooke nodded, steadier this time. "I will," she said. "I don't know the future. I don't know how long Brooke will stay strong. I don't know if fear will try to crawl back into her. But I do know this. I held on to my home. And this time, I didn't just hold a cabin. I held my name, my rights, and a lesson my daughter will have to live with. Love is not changing someone's locks and calling it care." I rested my hand on the windowsill and whispered, like I was speaking to Cal, "I held the house." Outside, the pines stood still. Snow fell slow. And in the cold, clear air of the mountains, I knew I was still here. Unerased, unpushed aside, just because I was older. Not this time.